Hey everybody, welcome to the stream. My name is Josh Herman. I'm the Chief Creative Officer here at Gnomon. Very excited to be having another event with you all tonight. To get some housekeeping out of the way, first off, thank you very much to Lenovo for sponsoring this event. Thanks to Lenovo's sponsorship, we're able to have these events and other cool, awesome events like what you're seeing right now, which are also stored on our YouTube channel and our Twitch channel. So if you want to go check those out after this event. I'm super excited to be having this event. We have a really cool event tonight with Aaron Sims Creative, talking about one of the new and interesting projects he's been working on in Unreal 5. I recently did the Unreal Fellowship and have kind of fallen in love with Unreal, so this is something that I'm personally very interested in to kind of see the behind the scenes and how it's changed some of the creative process about what they are working on. So I'm very excited to see that. Before I introduce our guests and we get moving with the event, we're actually going to play a very quick teaser trailer about the project that they worked on. So I'm going to go ahead and play that very quickly, and as soon as that's over, we'll introduce them and get them on the show. Pretty amazing. I'm super excited to watch this today. Yeah, I don't know. That's just awesome. For anybody who's wondering, I see a couple questions in the chat already about where you can watch this event. If you're watching it on Facebook, we do have closed captioning on our Facebook, so if you need that, please head there. But we'll also be streaming this on our Twitch page and our YouTube page, so you can also head there to choose a different platform if that prefers, or you prefer that, I guess. So anyways, let's get started with the event. Very excited. First person I'm going to be introducing is the founder and CEO of Aaron Sims Creative, Aaron Sims. Aaron Sims began his legendary career over 3 decades ago as a special effects artist working under industry giants Rick Baker and Stan Winston. As a critical voice in the making of some of the most memorable and iconic movie creatures of all time, his techniques in the world of visual effects help influence the face of character and concept design for film and television early on in their application. In 2005, Aaron Sims Creative was formed with the sole purpose of bringing together the world's most talented concept and visual artists to create and realize unforgettable characters, creatures, and environments for all platforms of visual entertainment, including Stranger Things, the Planet of the Apes trilogy, and Wonder Woman. Recently, ASC has teamed up with Epic Games for a series of high-profile projects, including the latest Unreal 5 demo, Valley of the Ancients, and most notably, ASC released The Eye, CALANTHEK, the trailer we just watched, a short film produced entirely in Unreal 5 and completed in only 6 weeks. The film made its world debut in Fortnite's Short Nightmares Film Festival in late October 2021, and Aaron recognizes the power and efficiency of real-time workflows and considers Unreal Engine to be the ultimate tool for the modern storyteller and the next great leap in creative technology. Our second guest will be Steffen Reichstadt, the creative director of Aaron Sims Creative. Trained as a traditional fine artist and oil painter, Steffen moved to Los Angeles and joined ASC in 2008, where he currently serves as creative director with a hands-on approach to overseeing the stable of talented artists at ASC. Steffen's experience is reflected in an impressive list of credits that includes blockbuster feature films, TV, and video game releases. In addition to his executive role, Steffen continues to work as a lead concept artist for the company and has directly contributed to and managed hundreds of projects over the last 13 years. Aaron and Steffen, going to bring you both on right now. Welcome to the stream. Super excited to have you both here.
Thanks, Josh. That was a nice introduction, and it's very nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody.
Yeah.
How are you? And just a heads up. So yeah, and if you guys haven't seen it yet,
Yes.
go and check out the short, The Eye. It's on Unreal's YouTube channel as well. But yeah, like I said, how many minutes was it, Aaron, in the end total?
It's around nine total.
9 minutes of final animation in 6 weeks with no comp, all on Unreal. pretty wild.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
The no comp aspect of it, I think, is part of what's the most impressive thing. Is that I think a traditional short film goes through like post and comp and all this long post process, and it sounds like with what you've done, you've more or less like removed that part or combined it into other parts.
Yeah, and we'll actually, we'll be covering a lot of that, like the process and why we decide not to do comp. A lot of a comp, the reasons in the end was the software itself is so superior in so many ways of rendering even effects, which we'll get into, coming up. But the other is that we didn't have time to comp. In comp, you have to think about the time it takes just to do that. There's elements that have to be put together, and the interactive light sometimes, if you don't have it in your shot itself, you're going to have to make it up. So we really didn't have the luxury, but luckily we didn't need to. So, but we'll talk about all that coming up here. And I think before we actually jump into that, we want to kind of like just talk about our, how our company formed, my background, and I guess if you want to show our show reel before we so you can kind of see what the latest stuff we've been working on, kind of what we do and how we've, and from there we can just talk about the process of how Unreal has made our life kind of amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll go ahead and play that show reel now, and then we'll chat about that afterwards. Here we go.
Right.
Well, you guys have contributed.
No, you're frozen.
Lost him.
How's
A ton of amazing. Am I back?
you're Josh? You're frozen. That's the fun of this streaming that we do.
I know, right?
Yeah,
The technology.
live production, baby, live TV.
Yeah,
We're all live. We'll do it live. Am I back
Live.
yet?
you are back.
Yeah, no, it's
All right. Well, you
it's
guys have
been-
contributed to a ton of amazing stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was just, some of the most recent stuff. We're kind of going to go through a little bit of like our, history and how we evolved how I evolved, kind of from makeup effects to creating the company ASC, bringing on Steffen on, and has been my right-hand man for pretty much since I started. And we've, developed a lot of things together, and, kind of like a lot of challenging too, like through the industry, how it changes. One thing that we've really, and my whole career, I've been a part of aspects of it where it's really evolved and changed in such a way that you have to adapt so quick. And I think that a lot of people, it's not in their nature to change that quick. And I think, myself, it's something I feel lucky that I don't know if it was something my father taught me or something like that, but never hold on to something too long and be too precious about it because it'll probably go away. And that sometimes that is, the technology or your skills, how you're applying them. But the one thing and we'll get into like some of this stuff and why we chose Unreal, how it kind of came about for us. But really, like, the aspect of, for me, as long as how I always looked at it is like when visual effects came along, what was this? It scared a lot of people in the practical world. It scared a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people in the animation world that were doing cell animation. And to me, I embraced it because it's like all that knowledge that I had from those practical days now can be applied in a new way. And I thought that was exciting. And I always look at that as every time something changes, it's like I don't get discouraged about like, oh, I have to learn something new. I actually get excited for, especially if it's in our industry, if it's something that's going to help and our ability to be able to design or create faster, better, and more in real time, then that's exciting to me. So I take the time to learn it. One thing you'll see
Absolutely.
when we're going through this stuff, and I think a lot of people have experienced, a huge change with COVID, really impacting how we all work. I mean, typically, like, we've done these before with Noman, and we've been on a stage
Mm-hmm.
before, and don't have these like technical issues that may happen. So bear with us, on our side too, like, because there's stuff that we're actually going to show. If it doesn't, work, they're going to let me know.
Sure.
Um, but that's part of that's part of it. But the other thing too is that what it did is it made us all work from home, and it made me learn Unreal in a way that I didn't think I was going to actually be able to excel. Once I started getting into it, we'll talk about it as we move forward and show that process, and where that seed was planted, and how it evolved. But it is interesting how when I talk to other people, how their careers have changed too. But hopefully, what we can do is in this talk that we're doing is really inspire artists and filmmakers too to look at Unreal as like something that's not intimidating, but something that actually will enhance your ability to create story and design. So
Absolutely.
And
And
I'll
sorry to interrupt, Stefan, just so
yeah.
anybody knows, in the chat, we actually just posted the link to the short, to the eye. So if anybody wants to watch that, it is there for you. So go ahead.
And what I would say on that is that like you said, like we kind of cut our teeth in doing practical visual like more traditional visual effects, film and TV and that kind of stuff. And when COVID came around, we were a pump and shock. We had 50 people in a space in Burbank, and if you had asked me beforehand if there was any way that we could ever possibly go remote, I would have told you no. But it has a way of the industry had a way of changing on us, and it kind of forced our hand. And now I believe, at least in our industry, for the better. So now we've got it's forced us to use these new tool sets that we love, and I can't imagine ever going back.
Yeah. I second that. I think that this has been a kind of as horrible as COVID has been for a lot of people, and it still is. And how many lives have been upturned in the negative way and lost. It's again, I look at for ourselves, we look at our industry and how has this improved our world. How we evolved and changed and the fortunate part is that being at home and not having to be in an office and go, shit, it's 7 o'clock, I got to go home. I never
Yeah.
leave. I think, and that's a
Yeah.
disadvantage, but that's also the advantage when you were trying to learn something new. So
It's
that's
Well,
perfect.
and there are hell weeks, right? Like where you're at the office and you're trying to finish something, you're sleeping on the couch. Well, now if I just need a power nap, it's right there.
There you go.
Anyways,
Yeah, right. So I'm going to start sharing some images. Just kind of, I'm first going to start about like where my past is. So we've heard about it. I'm going to do it really quick so it doesn't bore everybody to see kid pictures of me and stuff like that, which will creep you out. But there should be some entertainment to this as well. So I'm going to share my screen here, and let's see. Let me know if I. All right.
Here we go. I'm going to put that on now.
Okay. Cool. So everybody see this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so basically what we're going to be talking about really, the main thing is the eye, CALANTHEK, and how we made this film in 6 weeks, and how we actually wrote the story in Unreal as well. So we're going to talk about that process and what does that mean, writing in Unreal. So I'll explain all that as we go when we get closer to that part of it. Right now I'm just going to kind of go through my creepy past just to kind of freak everybody out right now. So I started. You can see over at the top. It's like in the 70s. A friend of mine, Greg Punchetz, we grew up together. He's also in the industry of great talent. We were both like had a Super 8. We just made films and had a blast. So we did a lot. That's where I started experimenting with visual effects too. The old optical effects, or like superimposing and doing weird stuff. Like I had a swimming pool. And I would throw my dog in it, and then I would go to the toilet and flush it, and look like I threw my dog in my toilet. And it was early days of like experimenting with like tools. The thing back then that was exciting and also frustrating, that probably no one here, unless you're close to my age, can identify with, is that it was that time of you do this effect, you do this, or a short or whatever you did, and you go get it developed, and it would take a week before you got the film back, and you put it on your projector and play it, and you go, oh, that's crap, I got to do that all over again. So it made me really appreciate digital, to be quite honest, when that came around, the instantaneous aspect of it. So then the 80s, we get to the creepy 80s, and my mullet. You can see the different hairstyles I had, like the mullet. So this down here, like the first image, that was Fright Night 2. This is before Rick Baker. The one below it is Gremlins 2, which was Rick Baker's. That's my first project with him. If you don't know who Rick Baker is, he's a legend in the industry. Won probably most of the Academy Awards of a makeup effects artist. It's just a pleasure, and I learned so much from him. In the 90s, my hair started to grow out, as you can see. But then, this is, it's kind of interesting. You see Men in Black here. So I designed those worm guys, and it was kind of interesting. We worked on, every time we work on a Men in Black movie, they always have them back, and it's kind of exciting. That's why it was in our reel, because ultimately I designed those characters, and it's kind of cool that they still have a life even this many years later in the films, even though they're short and brief. But there's a whole story, and I won't bore you with the whole how they actually came about. That'll be another topic if you're ever interested in how the worm guys, because they weren't written in the script. They were brought in because it's in an interesting way, of an organic way of me designing it, and the director falling in love with it and wanting to write something about it.
That's amazing.
And then in 2000 is when I went to Stan Winston, and he's the makeup effects. He did most of the animatronics, and for Jurassic Park, actually all the animatronics for Jurassic Park and all those movies. He's well known for some spectacular, robotics like Terminator, Predator, Aliens. But he was also him and James Cameron developed Digital Domain together, so they were really big on visual effects, and growing that as an industry. So they got hands off for a while, and they left. Unfortunately, Stan's not with us. He passed away. He was, like Rick, he was another mentor that basically taught me a lot in completely different ways than Rick did as an artist and as a businessman. But what's cool about this image here, so this is the first digital image that I can for AI. That I think, and as far as all the research I can do that was ever done as a digital character that was designed, and that was in Softimage, and it was a scenario where Stan said, "Hey, use the software and this program's Softimage to design these robots for this new Steven Spielberg movie." And I told him, "Well, this is an animation program; it's not a design program." So this is before a lot of the design programs that we know of today, really, that existed. And so it was kind of a fluke, and this kind of started my whole process of how I design and my company growing from there. And now it's just like everybody looks at digital art and they go, oh, that's, that's always been around, I guess. But this is, in some ways, I think Stan pushed me to create this, that I wouldn't have done it on my own, because I wouldn't have looked at Softimage as a software that was for designing. But it was. And then 2006, which I left Stan's at 2005, and roughly the end of that 2006 is when we started and I formed Aaron Sims Creative. It was really me at the beginning. One of the first projects was Incredible Hulk. And then around, we'll get into that in the next page here, is 2008. Steffen came on board, and I started growing my company. So it started to grow, and it kept growing and growing. And so in that time, we did visual effects and design, and then now we're in Unreal. So this gives you a little bit of a 2006 ASC started. Just a few of the projects. These are more the recent ones. And we were just a design studio at the time, because I had done visual effects. I did visual effects over at Stan's. I did makeup effects, and I just wanted to design. And it was a new time in the industry when the studios didn't know where to go, if they needed to go to a visual effects house or a makeup effects house, but they had a script with a character or creature, so they needed a design. And so that's where I came on board and helped that process. And now it's kind of like it's the norm, and a lot of people get some great, incredible education at Noman too for this whole same process. But we feel very fortunate to know a lot of the artists and Alex Alvarez, and support this whole process, because it's really about it's people understanding the tools to be able to create their art, in a medium that we all love. So 2015 is when we really started with the visual effects, and Steffen, if you want to maybe talk about some of that stuff, like how that we talked a little bit at the beginning about how we were doing more standard, but how that evolved to where we started using Unreal in about 2018 for VR.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm just now remembering, even just thinking about the process of starting a visual effects studio, reminds me of why I now like Unreal so much and why I don't like traditional visual effects anymore. Is because, we cut our teeth doing TV stuff. We did the visual effects for the first season of Stranger Things, the Demogorgon and all the creature stuff in there. Some cool stuff with James Wan for a bunch of different films, but like The Conjuring and things like that. Lots of creature feature stuff, lots of TV stuff. But it's funny because the nature of visual effects is that it is super laborious, and it requires exceptional communication between teams. And it's not something you want to start up lightly. It's like a hardcore thing, and especially when you're moving in a team. And our team wasn't even that big at the time. It was less than 20 people, and eventually it grew up to around 50, which is still small, really small for a visual effects company. But it's tough to manage a team like that and manage quality control and do quality work. And so, kind of pivoting into Unreal and the kind of workflows of real time and working in Perforce and being able to have like really strong version control and things like that, now just seem like obviously the future. You're not stumbling around in random versions of random scenes in Maya, and then everybody trying to cobble their stuff together and building one-off pipelines out of Shotgun and that kind of stuff. It's just so simple, so streamlined. So very, very grateful to Unreal and to Perforce for developing these tools to making cool things easier.
Yeah, it's been a journey, and it's funny because I really wanted to. The reason why I started to want to really engage back into visual effects is because I was so as a design studio, we design a lot of characters and creatures, and I felt like, oh, we're giving these away to other companies to develop, and then sometimes you'd see them and you'd fall in love with them, or it's like, oh, that's our design, or that's not our design, and we just thought, let's complete this by being able to do everything, be able to design it, give studio, but it is like what Steffen said, it was just so laborious. It's one of those things that it's hard to manage. It's really, and for me as an artist, I'm all about like. The instant gratification of something, and that's where Unreal, like, I fell in love with, because I didn't have to wait for renders. It's all real time. I could experiment with stuff and see it, and not go experiment with it and render it, and almost like in a weird way, like going back from the visual effects traditional way that reminded me of when I was a kid, like I said, in the 70s, where it was like, it was kind of cool, but it's like I was so anxious because I had to wait for something before I got the print back and realized, oh shit, I got to redo it all.
And it's so painful with traditional visual effects. Like, you kick off a render and you wait maybe a day, maybe a week, and then it comes out and you're like, well, got to do this again. Neat.
Yeah. Start that one over. Yeah.
Great.
Or sometimes it's just like such a minor change. You're like, all right, minor change.
Well, and if you're doing hundreds of shots, right? Hundreds of shots, you need really hardcore equipment for that, right?
Yeah.
You need like hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in render farm equipment, and that just seems silly. It seems
right now there's with real time, it's like you could have a farm of some sort, but it's not as necessary. We were able to, and we'll get into that on the eye, but how fast we were able to turn around everything just to get it out, our images. So here, this is when we started Unreal. So this is what was the date? It was 2018. Right? It was right. When we worked on this project called Chained, and it's kind of a reimagining of a Christmas Carol, but more like terrifying. Which I think was always like a terrifying story anyway. But this is a virtual reality scenario, and it was a really good experience. Is where I didn't have hands-on experience working in Unreal in this, but I saw it from kind of the background as like just watching people, and I got excited about what the potential could be. But then VR is limited too, not only because it's one of those things that it's like a game in a lot of ways. It's not like a cinematic or a short. It has to work in real time and be at a certain polygon rate or topology, all that stuff. Just it has to be small enough that you can see it in your Oculus or whatever you're watching it in real time. So as much as I was excited about it, I felt like I was more excited about getting into it and seeing what I could do with it. So,
right. And games are like that, right? Games are tough because it has to work every time. It can't just work one time. It has to work every time. Yeah. But I guess that's what's exciting about cinematics is it only has to work. You only have to get one good render.
Yeah, it's harder.
If it's beautiful, great. Call it, cut it.
Yeah, we talk about the eye, we talk about these cinematics and stuff. There's so many cheats you can do, and a lot of them cheats are done in those with compositing, but cheats within real time, and we'll talk about that. But you can't do those cheats in a game or in VR the same way. So it's because a lot of them are still memory intensive for the most part. So it was around a few years later. This is actually when we say this is 2020. This is when I started learning Unreal myself. So I fell in love with, when I saw some clips from various people, what they were creating with Unreal, I thought, oh wait, I can take this beyond just the game. So there's several stories that we have internally at ASC, and these were, kind of the development, some R&D that was created for a story called Dive, which is basically about some divers that find an ancient civilization, and these creatures live there, and they have to survive. So it was a great opportunity, and this is still in development right now because now, especially now that we just did the CALANTHEK, this is another thing that's brought a lot of attention to it because there's not that many water projects in Unreal. But I felt like, I like the challenge of water. I liked all these things. And I'll talk about why, I in some ways like to torture myself with sorry, I'm advancing too much, torture myself with things that might be too difficult to do from anyone else's point of view. But I like to go.
That being said, really excited to come back to this and redo it in UE5.
Oh yeah, this is all. Yeah, this is all UE4. This is before, and this is like I was just sitting. I was, everybody was locked down, and I was like, okay, I'm going to start learning this, and kind of had a small team help develop. One of our artists, Asan, designed this cool spider for project. We rigged it, animated it, did some subsurface scattering, but this is all real time. This is like 30 or 40 frames a second. So there was no rendering. It was just like, this is what it looked like. It was like, so it was really exciting. And then we got into environments and all that other fun stuff. But now, like with 5, and we'll get into that, what these some challenges with that, because it's now that they changed the software in some ways, but they improved it in a way that's really exciting. So we were hired by Epic, and this really happened after we showed them a dive, which they actually gave us a grant to develop dive, since when they started seeing some stuff we were doing with it. This one was called Valley of the Ancients. That way we were hired by Epic to help kind of like test out 5, in a way of building a product that's more game. They wanted to really push this for how far could you take a game to film level geo and rendering in real time. So that was kind of part of the challenge. If you haven't seen this, or I'm sure you've seen it if you're familiar with Unreal, because it's one of the whole 5 launch that they were talking about for early release. But this came with a lot of challenges, and Stephanie, if you want to talk a little bit about like some of those, or like what we were.
Well, yeah. So first of all, when we were working on this, it was basically like they were building the car while we were driving it. So, you'd be working on something, and then something just simply wouldn't exist. So you'd have to request something, and then the brain bar geniuses would be like, "Oh yeah, here it is. It exists now." But the thing is there was a lot of stuff that we had to do and then redo and then do and then redo, and there was some stuff that even Unreal couldn't tell you how it worked just yet. You had to see if you could break it. So specifically when it came to nanite. So when in the early days of nanite, they were like, "Hey, it can be any poly count you want. Go for it. Nuts. Like just literally just put in polys because you can."
The dream.
Yeah, right.
The dream of ZBrush directly into Unreal, and that's partially true. It's partially not true, but it's partially true. You can.
You can definitely do it.
You can do it, but the question is, like what does it do? And it won't necessarily affect perf that much, but your disk size will be like 5 terabytes by the time you're done, right? It's just like
Right.
there are still like game logic things you have to do. So for a character like this, so the premise that they gave us was that they wanted the character, all of the details of it, to be poly. They didn't want normal maps. They didn't want like the traditional game level stuff. They wanted it all to be in the model. And so we went there and we did that, and it was amazing that you can do that. But what we found at the end of it is that you still have to, you can't just smash right to the end. You do still have to follow the traditional game pipeline of where you start with your low poly and then add polys, and then do it cleanly. But the nice thing is now is that you can do that process just much faster, and then the end result is way higher, like way more high end. So it's more of like, it's more of a quality tool than it is a speed tool. I'll put it like that.
Yeah, and I think with it was definitely they wanted to push the envelope in a lot of ways, but it was really to push it in a way that wasn't necessarily like a cinematic. It was more for like how could we push next gen game, really. Right. So and I think that we learned a lot, and it excited me when I saw in it. And this is we were saying it's like it was changing as we were going, but I think that the software itself, I meant. But I think that what was exciting about it is that I started to see 5. In its early days and go, wow, I love this, the layout. I love what you can do with it. So I immediately started developing, other ideas, what we could do. and since they released early access, and it's early access isn't really supposed to be used for it's not ready for production. It's not production ready, but when we get into the eye, I'll talk about why I chose it, which we're talking about now, the eye CALANTHEK. So the part of this is we didn't just jump into it. So where did we all start? So we didn't just jump into the eye, right off the bat, like the short that you see. It actually, and we only had 6 weeks in the end. We actually had, when Epic came to us right after we did Battle of the Ancients, we started developing things with them. Said, hey, let's make some content. Let's do a bunch of, because they're very interested in creating content in Unreal in different ways. So I really wanted to push live action to start off with, because what I hadn't seen with these LED screens that you see on Mandalorian and all these other cool set extensions that are done in Unreal on these LED screens, that I hadn't seen an interaction with a creature, a character that's actually with an actor. So say you had a creature that wasn't just a puppet, or wasn't a person in a suit that could be there on set, but something that would typically be a CG character and be replaced. And so that hadn't been done, and I thought this is a great opportunity for us to create a cool story. And they wanted to create this scenario for doing live action, or for their Fortnite. They have these short Fortnite projects, and so we were hired to create one of those. And this one was purely a Halloween one. So this is what I'm going to show you here. Is this is how we started, and this is the live action version. So as started getting into, before we shot with actors and all that stuff, started building this, and this is within just a few hours. Build this whole thing, use mocap, and that's the beauty of it, and kind of lay out what our live action shoot was going to be. I worked with the DP, how we were going to do a crane, all this fun stuff. I'm not going to get into all the details because I really want to jump back into CALANTHEK, so we have enough time to talk about the eye and all that process. But what was interesting is that this inspired me when we were doing the previews for this. Is basically it was a true Halloween story. Since this was going to be launched on Halloween and Fortnite, we were doing this basically a cool Halloween story of an alien invasion. I don't want to get into all the details of everything, in case we want to do this again with them in another short. But I wanted to show it to you as an example is how this was utilized, with mocap really quick within just a few hours. Oh, let me go back. Sorry, I don't use PowerPoint as much as I should. I usually use Keynote, but I'm on my PC, so Keynote is. So ultimately, so all this stuff here was going to be live action. Actors on. We actually were shooting at Universal. It was going to be Universal backlot, all that stuff. And then what happened?
Super cool, by the way. This was actually the Elm Street. So we were going to shoot.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, that was like my geek radar went off, man.
Yeah, but what this served a purpose for what we were doing, is how we were going to shoot it, where the houses were, where they were going to walk, what the building was at the end, and then when they were basically being chased by aliens and stuff. It was an alien invasion, and then they come in here, and it's like this after this destruction of an impact. It's a high school gym, and they're trying to figure out what happened and all this, and then they meet somebody that's a stranger. He's got this weird alien weapon. There's a lot, again, I don't want to give away too much with this, but the process, all this whole thing behind them was all LED screens. So the idea, and then later on, the alien was going to appear and they were going to interact with it. But what happened is, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to talk about the whole virtual production pipeline thing, like LED screens and Unreal and all that kind of stuff. And it is super cool. We've actually made a bunch of Pepsi commercials using virtual production screens. So they set in the foreground, and then the entire background is LED walls, similar to what they were doing for Mandalorian. But weirdly enough, it's still very time consuming. It's still actors on set. It's still a lot of it's still traditional production and planning and all that kind of stuff. And of course, productions have issues, and that's actually what happened to us. There were some production issues that came up outside of our control. Nothing we could do about it the day before we were supposed to shoot. So we still owe Epic a short, and now we owe it to them in 7 weeks, 8 weeks. How do we pivot, and how do we get there? And I'll kick it back to Aaron. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's great. No, that's typically so at that point we realized, okay, wow, we have roughly 6 weeks to like get all this done. I mean, we had like a week, I think, of like trying to figure it out before. So it was like
it was a week of story planning.
Basically, yeah, story planning.
A week to write a script.
Yeah. So that once that happened, it was like I sat there over the weekend because it happened on a Friday, and the strangest thing is it happened on Friday the 13th when we got the we can't make this movie, which will make the Friday the 13th even more meaningful for me in the future. But in a lot of ways, it pushed me in a weird way and myself to not, because I love live action. I've done so much, like I said, from the past, from makeup effects days. But it really pushed me when I started getting into this to fall more in love with animation and animation in everything in Unreal. And we'll talk about why that is. And but again, part of everything that can go wrong in live action does go wrong. So this right here, for that weekend, I came up with a story, and it was basically, it's like about a character, and hopefully most of you have seen the short, so I'm not going to give away as we talk about this too much of the story, and there's a twist at the end and all that stuff, and hopefully I'm not going to ruin it for people that haven't seen it, but if I do, then I apologize. But basically this whole thing
go watch it anyways.
Yes, watch it.
It's cool.
So what I did is over the weekend I came up with a story. Like it was Friday, it was Saturday the 14th. I came up with like a story of like what if it was like I needed to do something in a very short period of time, get everybody on Epic to say, okay, this is we like the idea, let's move forward with it, because we still need a short for this Fortnite premiere. So what we ended up doing is I ended up coming up with just kind of the story basically, and I wanted to show some visuals. And I always do this: is I just quickly create a space background, a spaceship. We see it kind of come in, and the idea is that we were going to follow a character to this planet that they were basically a maintenance crew that was going to go down. But I knew I wanted to just do it with one person and try to figure out how to do that to where it is a doable thing. But all this stuff was done like marketplace stuff for the most part. Like, the ship actually was a turbo squid, and these are the shortcuts, and we'll talk about how, literally it took just a couple hours just to do all this, just to kind of get the idea. And so this planet is one of the planets you can get on the marketplace. And then later on in the short, we ended up doing a matte painting for this. Then I just roughed out like a weird alien world, some kind of interesting lighting that, and the ship coming in, and it kind of got the idea to where I wanted it to be this weird, desolate alien world, because the idea of this is it's a maintenance person that's coming down to fix a fallen drone, and the drone's down here. So this really sparked the idea and of my story that I had, which was just a couple of paragraphs. And I said, let's start here and we can develop it. And then we had these caves that we started building for Dive. That I thought, okay, let's take place in the caves. So it was interesting, and this is when we start talking about story development in Unreal, is that this process was developed kind of in Unreal as it was going. Like I'd write some stuff, then I brought on a writer, Vivian. She was, this is playing the same one. And she helped come up with some really amazing, and the twist and everything like that. We worked closely to really create the story that you see. But before even she was brought on, then to help me with the stories, once I got the okay from my little paragraph that I wrote and then that little teaser I showed, I started just building the stuff myself in Unreal. So again, I was building. I'm just going to skim through this. This is the first previs that was done on it. It's a little slow. This beginning, that was a big comment. They were like, okay, this is cool. We've seen space scenes. Let's speed up this whole opening with the ship coming in. Started doing development on this ship that we got from Turbo Squid. But this is part of how we started to develop this stuff is quickly, find, either stuff we had in our library or purchase or on the marketplace with Unreal. And this is, when we started, early days, like, we had a character that was our guys were working on internally, and also a team that we hired to help us with the metahumans called Shapeshifters Creative, and they helped kind of create some of this her face and how the rig was going to work and all that stuff, which was really exciting for us because it was early days for me to understand how the metahumans worked. And hopefully everybody's familiar with metahumans. If not, I'll be talking about that as well. So it was kind of a slower, film, and it was a different story a little bit. It was more like it was her last job. She was gonna go home, and then she gets a call, and it's not the same story that we had. It started to develop as we went. But all this stuff helped us answer questions. And
Right.
so
The tone for this one was more like Blade Runner, slow, hard sci-fi kind of a thing. And then the direction that we kind of went in the end, via the previs, and because Aaron is the lead artist on this, just smashing through it at light speed, because the back and forth was so quick with the story team and the producing team, then the story just kind of evolved over time. So basically did a whole version that is like the slow, dramatic Blade Runner version. And then they said, great, let's speed it up a little bit, and made it like a little bit more poppy, a little more fun, and a little bit more like action adventure-y. And so I guess that's the thing is that, because you can do a whole rough story and because you can do the previs so fast, it means that you don't have to commit like halfway through or like 3/4 of the way through the project. You can scrap the whole thing and then start the story all over again. It's not advisable, but you can do it.
Yeah, and I think it made it easy for, this is, and, talking about like a team too, is that at this point it was, we didn't even have Perforce up at this time. It was just me, again, playing around and just trying to, and my partner, Christopher Graham, he got in our mocap suit here at my house and just did all of this with her. So we knew I kind of knew what I wanted for her to do. And so we just started like, kind of acting it out here in my house and just putting the mocap into these shots with our untextured, rough model. And developing the story this way, it answered a lot of questions, and we realized we don't need this shot of her opening this whole thing. It's just all this stuff. A lot of times you wouldn't know unless you did it, and but it answered so many questions. Like this. Let me go back to. There's so many things that we started like as we developed. I thought it'd be interesting to figure out like why she's going in, because she's trying to figure out what happened to this drone. She doesn't have enough information. She picks up things, examines it, all that stuff we tossed out because it's like, well, it's more about her just getting in. But it was all stuff that we were experimenting with. And
P.S. Shout out to XNs for the suits.
Yeah. So yeah,
XNs, no cleanup.
Yeah. XNs is amazing.
Great.
So this is all like, and it was very user friendly. Also, we used Stretch Sense gloves for her hands, and we'll talk about like why how some cheats were accomplished. The gloves are amazing. The suit is incredible, I think, but you can see even here like see how her hand's not even attached to it. That had nothing to do with the gloves. It was just this is previs. And then when we started running out of time, the shortcuts that we took. But even this, like, Christopher, like walking through like this area, these rocks, it was in my living room. There wasn't anything on the floor, but he knew that there was going to be this rocky ground. So he actually did this whole like kind of like trip right there over a rock, which actually, he goes, oh, should we do that take again? I go, no, that's going to be perfect. So this kind of like, it's funny because when you're messing with mocap, you can instantly see this immediately, throw it into Unreal and see into the scene and see, does it work, or do I have to just jump back in the suit and do it again? Opposed to having an animator spend all that time roughing it out and not having and having to redo it constantly. It was a faster process. And in a lot of ways, a lot of this stuff was left I left in because it was perfect for the final. Um, and so there was no true cleanup except for like little things here and there. So that was kind of the first process of like a previs. Now I'm going to talk about like here real quick, and then I'm going to open up a scene and show you like the pros of 5, and again talk about like the story process. But so the reason 5 is so powerful, and everybody I'm sure has heard like everything about lumen and nanite. That was the main reason that I wanted to do it in 5, because I wanted to be able to get this nice bounce light you see here without having to add a bunch of extra lights or baking it and everything else. Because I'm not a big fan of baking lights. I want to be able to change it and see it happen immediately. It makes sense for games and stuff and to keep everything kind of, but render more at a faster rate in the end, and have a really high quality. But the global illumination of lumen was just incredible, and it saved me so much time lighting. And then nanite again was, I'm sure you've seen all these different things that Epic has put out, but it's mind blowing, like the amount of detail you can put into it. Again, like we were talking about before, should you for all cases? Probably not, but for cinematic, why not? Like if you can do it and it's all in the render, it's like, but if it's for a game, it's like, it may, have some other, not that nanite, it will be a problem for a game. It's just being smart about how you utilize it.
Actually, just hit a quick question I just saw pop up real quick. Since this is just preview 1, you're asking if there was any crashes and that kind of stuff. Oddly, no, not many. There are crashes in there, but weirdly enough, they have to do more with metahumans than they do UE5. UE5 is pretty solid.
Yeah,
I mean, not everything's in it yet. So, like, if you're used to 427 and you're doing some pretty hardcore stuff with virtual production and that kind of stuff, stay in 427. But if you're just doing like beautiful looking images, yeah, go for 5. I mean,
yeah, 5. Don't
shoot me if it doesn't work out, but
yeah, there maybe we have some pretty powerful machines, Steffen and myself. So,
right.
But I think at the same time, it was very stable, except for like you said, like the metahumans. We got into them. That there was a few scenarios, and there wasn't anything about 5. I think it's just the nature. It's a new product that there's a lot of complex things going on with the metahumans, and part of it wasn't necessarily like every scenario. It was the stuff I was doing and pushing it in ways that might have caused it to crash, because it was doing things that probably a lot of people wouldn't be doing.
Well, and that's just the nature of when you take one thing that's proto and you mix it with another thing that's proto, right? And neither of them are really official releases yet. So expect if you combine a bunch of stuff that's not supposed to be used, you're going to break it every once in a while. But outside of that, you learn to work around it, and it was great. It was fine, no problems.
Yeah, and then the other part for 5 was like the control rig down here. Like, and we'll talk about that. Like, I really pushed, instead of going back and forth to another software, I really wanted to stay as much in engine. And this comes back to like, the speed of the time that we had. Now, a lot of people may say, well, it's like a learning curve to learn how to animate in Unreal, but there's also the fact of going back and forth from another software and it not working, or not having the animators not having all the information they need. And I try to limit a lot of the animation to more finesse and detail and face, and keep a lot mocap, even the alien and creature, and we'll talk about that here shortly too.
But actually, just to reiterate that, so this was rigged and animated 100% in Unreal.
Yeah, so everything you see in this was done in Unreal.
Control, like from scratch, control rigs and things like that.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but really, but like honestly, like once you do it, you realize it's like an extra step to go back and forth between Maya and then like clean things up. Like it makes things so easy, because then as well, the nice thing about it, me as an art director, I can, like, if an animator goes and does something and they push it through and I see it, and I see something that I want to note, or one thing I want to change, I don't have to give it back to them where they have their Maya scenes somewhere else on the other side of the planet. I can just do it myself right then and there, correct the quick tweak, save it, and now it's done, right? V1 gone.
Yeah.
And so that process of working in a team, because of that, makes control rig so powerful. If everybody kind of knows it and everybody can kind of level up on one another, it makes everything run so smooth, so fast.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, that's part of this whole part here that I'm talking about is shortcuts, is that the control rig really made, and doing everything with mocap was a time saver. And that was obviously it makes sense, like you're doing a human character, like, why wouldn't you do mocap? Why keyframe all that anyway? But there was all the other aspects of it that came through it. Like there is cleanup, not cleanup on the mocap. Actually, Exon's data was, I have to say, there was zero cleanup. It was really like just penetrating arm through the body. Sometimes like, oh, I got to move the arm out a little bit because the arm's going through, and that's where you use the instead of going back to Maya or any software really, 3D Studio Max or Blender or anything like that, and doing those changes. And then bringing it back, it's like you could just take the control rig, make an additive on top of your mocap, and then move the arm out. And I'll show you that an example of that, how easy that is. It's really that kind of stuff just makes it a lifesaver.
And then I just saw a question there, or somebody mentioning mouth tracking animation and all that kind of stuff. You're right. That was a choice to avoid that.
Yeah. So that was it.
There was no way we could do it. No way we could do it in 6 weeks. So okay, how can we build something that fits our needs in the timeline that we have? And so we ended up making assets built around the problem that we had, of having to do a full 9-minute short in 6 weeks.
Yeah. It was that's part of it. It was like, and part of it is like when you're planning your story, and say that you do have a limited time of like 6 weeks, or even if you had like 3 months or whatever like that, be smart with your time, because the thing is like I'm one of those types that like I'll go as far as I can and basically say, yeah, I can do it no matter what. And a lot of times I hit walls and I have to adjust. But this one, I knew that we had limited time. We had 6 weeks to create this, and there was no way we were going to do lip sync. There was going to be some dialogue, not as much as I thought we actually what it ended up being in there. And that was an evolution of getting and watching it, realizing we needed more dialogue. Because we needed to care about this character. We needed to know what this character was doing. It's a very short period of time to spend this much information, have this much information, and a twist, and all this without knowing what's going on. So the dialogue was important. So it became a character choice. And Vivian, the writer, she's also did the voice, which was incredible, and just would spit out like so many, like every day, like give me like 20 different things I could play around with, just voiceovers that I could throw into the edit and mess with. So some other shortcuts, and we'll get into I'll show you some when we get into it, like lighting and all this, and metahumans and stuff. But part of it too is like, that was one, not having to deal with the face. The cave, like I said, we built a story around it because we already had caves built for another project, dive. So there was just taking a lot of that information. The other was like, finding elements that we could tweak, repurpose, reuse. The suit was, and this whole thing was designed and built by artist Vilson, incredible artist. He, we knew we wanted to use a metahuman, and the metahuman really is just a face. Really, it's like the rest of it was, except for the rig and stuff that's underneath. But all this was built, and this is the real custom piece. A lot of the ship and some of this other stuff, and there was some custom elements, but they were also from other things that we knew we didn't have time to create it from scratch. But she was too important not to. So we'll go through. Like part of this is like lighting. So here I'm going to just open up a project real quick that, and it's a lot of these you'll see. This is a shot that's with the ship coming through. So you'll see that this is all. It's probably buffering because I have a couple of different scenes open. So I had to close up some scenes because you know, it was using too much of my memory, I guess, in my computer. So this scene here,
It's running pretty smooth.
oh, good.
Yeah.
So this whole project here, like this, you know, this is what you pretty much see in the short, and this is like all these effects, like all that stuff. It's all in camera. It's like it's all in, and there was no compositing. It was like, and so all this stuff was trying to bring it to life, you know, opposed to bringing it into comp and doing a bunch of tweaks. Now there's some creative choices of like, you know, story-wise too. When you see it, is like, you know, I wanted to create some like this what we call like the shimmer, which is a thing that creates a loop, and it these were effects that we adjusted that were also in the marketplace, but I, you know, got creative and started messing with lightning mixed with a particle system, a bunch of stuff to create my own custom like effect for these like weird like glowy life forms that basically fuck with time. But again, this is the beauty of like, say this, you know, this whole scene here, and not having to say like, okay, you build this and you have to light it, is that, you know, I basically was able to, and a lot of this won't be new to a lot of people, but how quick I could just change the lighting, you know, like how quick, just on the fly. And now it's like I decided, oh, you know, I like this lighting better. It's done. It's already there. Now that's nothing new. That's been in 426. Now the cool thing I'm going to get into, and this is the lumen aspect. So if I turn this is only one directional light. If I turn this off, you'll see everything goes dark. And you see how it slowly goes dark too, which is kind of like, because it has to build up, it's generating the light itself. Like, so now as I click it on, it blooms into this, and that's the lumen that's basically bouncing off the real-time global illumination. Now, it's so easy, like you basically like say, I want to add more bounce, you know, and not have to add a bunch of lights everywhere to create all this, or some other process is that this indirect light intensity, you know, I have it at a low amount here. If I put it up to 90 here, you'll see now like that light from the sun is glowing through here. And imagine if like that's what I want, like to make it feel like there's like this, then you'd have to set up so many lights to create this. So that's where like this kind of stuff was like a lifesaver.
Right, and just to riff on that, like I remember, you know, any time where previously where you were doing it in 426 or 427, and I was having to do like ArchViz renders and things like that, you know, like anything that's architectural or anything that's outside or indoors, you end up setting up like 50 lights, and you have to hand, you know, feather each one together to make it, you know, this beautiful looking, very well balanced scene, and then you bake it for about 2 hours, and then you look at it and it's like, it's crap. You know, do it again. So, you know, the nature of lumen and the fact you can light an entire scene with one light, and if you want to get like some like in almost like traditional lighting, where if you want to get a little bit more bounce or a little bit more fill in a specific area, you can actually put up like a bounce card and light your scene with bounce cards. So like it's
really cool.
Yeah, like it's basically replicating real light as opposed to what Unreal used to be, which was like, let's fake a bunch of shit to make it look like it's real light.
Yeah, it's pretty fantastic. And that was you know, like when I said my decision of like why use 5 for this project. Part of it, again, it was time, but it was also I wanted to really push the envelope on like, you know, certain things of like how far could I take like the, you know, this like. We've seen a lot of like rocks and stuff. I wanted this to be kind of like these unique formations too. So I found some really cool scans of these. Just turn on some of this, make sure it does. Of these rocks, and they were just, you know, the fidelity and the texture was just so unique, and it was in its scan data. They had this really kind of cool, you know. Texture to it, like, you know, these kind of weird formations on it, and I thought, you know, I haven't seen that before, you know, in a lot of these, especially in a site. I wanted this to feel like an alien world. So what was really cool is to be able to use nanite to be able to push this with a bunch of different like scan data. There's obviously like mega scans, and there's a lot of mega scans in here, but these particular things, I wanted to create something that we haven't seen like in our standard. These are all just effects like dust and smoke, and this whole thing is full of like all kinds of effects in it. but like I would be able to take, that same piece of that, that rock and just kind of reposition it to create different shapes, because this is just one, and I made all these shapes out of just this one here. Uh, and so that was kind of exciting to be able to push that. And you can see if I go into wireframe mode, they don't exist here. You don't see them because this is part of the nanite aspect. What you see here is this is the landscape, and then this is all the effects that you're seeing. But those rocks don't, because it's calculated in a different way than it does like your typical geo. And you would have to ask them exactly how all that works, because they got Unreal is doing some crazy magic. That again is why I wanted to do this in 5. So those are two real big aspects of like what was so great, because I built this like in less than a day, like this whole thing. I thought, well, I'm just gonna start messing around with some cool shapes and just get the mood I want for this kind of like desolate world that feels like it wouldn't be a great place to live for sure. But what's great about this, this whole shot is I just had it to where I could actually go in if I wanted to even the close-up of the drone, all the way into the cave, where, I actually had a proxy of our procedures for scale, so I could figure out how that was going to be built. As I was building it, I start to build all this out. I even did a trick here. So when our ship flies in here, I wanted to speed up time. I just added another ship. Instead of creating a whole new scene, all that stuff, I added another ship that comes over here to create the one where it's landing. So I could just get all this in one cool shot. But obviously I cut it so you wouldn't notice that. So it gives the illusion that she's actually, she's landing way over here opposed to over here. All these are all tricks. Again, this is the fun tricks of like how fast you can just create something and render it out. In a lot of ways, it's not really rendering; it's doing it in real time. But there is a rendering. I use the render queue for everything. So if anyone's familiar with the sequencer, there's this method which you can just render out like that comes with the sequencer. It's fine actually. It's great. I usually try to do it with non-compression, and maybe a slow or a low compression. But when you're using the render queue, it comes with all these great additive things like that you can actually make your render look a lot better. And it renders just, may not be exactly real time because of that, but I know what I'm getting because I see all this in real time. So it's adding like that extra level of like detail. So a lot of times I would render in this, I would render it at 1920 by 1080 and upscale it to 4K, and you would not notice the difference because of this processing this does. So that saves time. Just if you think about like, how do I render 4K with all these effects? Then that's one process there. So
what we should do as well as like afterwards in the YouTube channel, we should actually post our render queue specs.
Yeah,
I'd love to see those. I was going to ask you if there were certain CVARs or what was you spicing it up with, I guess.
So there is a super spicy mix in there because we were actually working on it with Unreal. So this is like some of the head Unreal techs. We're kind of going back and forth with them, and we were like, okay, how about this? And they were like, how about this? And we kind of ended up like working our way to like the ultimate cinematic render specs kind of a thing.
Yeah, so they created. That was a good thing, and this is like the last week, and we'll get into that. Like as far as like Epic came around, they obviously were doing this for Epic, but their team came around, and Cubic Motion came in last week, like the last 4 days, really to help us spice everything up. And part of it was just create some cool like they saw my rendering settings and go, oh, here, why don't we'll set something up for you. So it was kind of cool. They it says the anti-aliasing, how that was all set up. All the different things. We had burn-ins too, just so that we actually could write like what it was. So especially when we're doing face capture, or not really face capture, because a lot of we did use the iPhone live link, and it was good for certain things. But when you're getting the subtlety, we really needed some animation help, and Cubic Motion helped us that last week to get all of our eyes, the subtleties of the eye in there. But so that's basically some aspects, So part of what I'm going to show you here too, before we go into the character and all that stuff, is you'll see this is, you know, it looks a little messy here. This is my this is the way I work sometimes, so ignore a lot of this stuff. But the really foundation of like what we were doing here is we create this map, which the maps are really known as scenes. These are the scenes that you're actually working with, and so these are all the main scenes. So I had like, you know, my opening scene, and we had all this stuff categorized too, which was, you know, and as I started to develop it, I would create a lot of these and create a sequencer, which is basically what your camera is and all your animation is in. And these were the different ones, and these were linked to the maps or the scenes. So they kind of work hand in hand. So this right here is that we see here is like a scene. Down here is a sequencer that all this stuff is connected to, that has animation. And so you can see all the different animation stuff here. That's, you know, smoke, you know, some animation with that, some of the effects, ton of stuff. But a lot of times, and if anyone's familiar with this, a lot of people use levels, and we do that quite a bit. But this levels are over here, and where you split it up, and I'll show you an example of that later on. Where some of the scenes we were doing that where it had a lot of different artists. But since a lot of this, some of these shots I was doing myself, just kind of playing into it, I knew I didn't. There's no reason to break this into a bunch of levels and spend that time. I already built it. I sketched it out. I was pretty much in love with it. There was nothing else I needed to do except spice it up. So not too many people would touch it. But when you do get into a place where you have multiple artists working on it, this is really powerful in how you break this up into these levels, into lighting, into animation, into different categories, so that when you're working on it in Perforce, that you wouldn't overlap each other. Someone could be working on the same scene but they just go into this level of whatever they're working on. So that's typically how you know, in production with a lot of people you would work. Again, this is part of the beauty, and part of the way to get this done really quick is you almost think is like, God, how many people would it take to do this? It's really a lot of it was me, a few team going on, because the more people you get to create this, the more it may bog it down in a weird way. I know that sounds awful, but that's the beauty of it as an artist, is to be able to open this up and create a world and quickly animate it and spit something out.
Absolutely. Got a good question from the chat. They wanted to know how you made the sky.
Oh yeah, okay. So before I move on, so the sky. This is some great stuff that. This guy here, it's really a cool sky, and so a lot of this stuff comes from, like you see in here, like some of this stuff, like this is scan data that I found on Turbo Squid, that I fell in love with these rocks. The sky was I don't have the artist name, but this came from the marketplace. So, and I did do some tweaking here and there, which allows you to, but here's the shader. So the shader works, and it basically allows you to animate you know, the speed of the clouds, which is just kind of basically like blending them together. You'll see it. So these clouds will stay in the same place, but it gives it a lot of life. But I fell in love with this, and again, you can just go to the marketplace and you basically type in animated skies or sky boxes, which is what this is, or sky maps. And so this particular one, you know, we ended up starting. We had a whole library of them, but I fell in love with this one for it, and we were only going to see the sky here and there, so I didn't. But it's pretty amazing. I mean, it's like you can see some interesting overlap here because of the way that the cheat is with the animation of it, where some of the clouds, when they start to move, that they'll superimpose themselves. Because this isn't volumetric, except for some of the effects that's back here. Like there's secondary things. And there's also lightning that was added that's also separate as well. Should be in here somewhere. We got so many different things going on.
But ASC there's probably some kind of record for the amount of marketplace content that one company has. We've got to be near the top, because basically what we do, we're just like, okay, I need blank. Okay, fine, grab the thing. I need blank. Okay, fine, go grab the thing. Because
so this could be a long scroll.
So this is it. So look at this. This just goes on forever. So this is what Stephen's saying. Like it doesn't end. So what I do is a lot of times we're sketching something out. Why build it from scratch? Why do that? And a lot of people go, "Well, is that cheating because you're using something else?" It's like, no. It's like it's all about like producing something, especially when you're just sketching it out. And then I modify it and change it. But and then you give credit to whoever as part of it. Also in Marketplace, which we'll talk about here in a bit, but is the alien, which we'll show that here.
Oh yeah, so yeah, more part of that. Just as an as an offhand comment. Yeah, it's the alien that was in the short is up on the Marketplace. Go and find it. If you Google, I think if you search for ASC, you'll find it. So.
And
anyway.
it's free, right?
And it's free.
And you get your own alien with its very own control rig in your very own little cave system.
That's awesome.
Yeah, free.
Yeah, it's free. So I opened this up. This is the shot when she comes down and she's walking around it with her case. But again, this is mocap, and most of this, like you saw in the early previews, not that much change except that we updated her costume and finessed like some overlapping arm stuff, which it's easy to do. So, but this whole shot here I was able to utilize and create a bunch of different shots from this. Where she looks up and then she looks over here at the cave and all that stuff, and it just it was kind of like the master, and then from there was end up having all these other lights are kind of like basically for the close-up shots of her, so that we can actually I could play around with the type of light I want. I think for a wide shot, a lot of times, like I said, most of the time the one key light serves a great purpose, but when you get into like close-ups and stuff like that, it's like when you're on set, you'd have like a DP would put up lights for to bring out like certain aspects and features of the actor. But so why I'm showing you this too is that basically our character here, we created this character, and it was the help of like shapeshifters helped us build some of the aspects of her her rig and helped me put her in here, and I learned a lot from them on how to utilize metahumans in the scene there, because it can be tricky if you're not familiar with it. But yeah, basically we had this setup with her so that we could, and again, shapeshifters helped us with some of this stuff with creating different things where we could, we made different versions of her. So there's a version of her like this where she's basically clean, semi-clean. This is like, she's still semi, like, she's been working for a few years in space and all that stuff. So there's some grunts there. But then she at a certain point, I don't want to give it away to anybody, but she gets injured, she crashes. And so we have this damaged version. We just click that on, and now she's, the same model now has like,
messed up.
Yeah,
That's
it's
cool.
all messed
Had a
up.
rough day.
Yeah, so her visor's all cracked and everything like that, and yeah, and scratch from like hitting the front of the ship or whatever like that, or the glass in the ship. So, and then we can click that off and go back to normal. But there's a lot of things like that, like that were custom made for this too, to just make our life easier. Everything with these little lights here that you can adjust. Her sweat, you can adjust the sweat, all that stuff on, which we're going to get into, like the next shorts that we want to do with these are really get into more facial stuff, like beyond the eyes, because I think with cubic motion they really helped us with bringing her eyes to life, and our animation team at ASC as well. But I think what I was going to show you with this too is how easy this was. Like, say you have this mocap, and this, all the mocap data down here, and the other this thing called additive. So that's basically we made another basically a control rig on top of the mocap data, and so let's see. So this is the control rig. You can see it, like all these things are, and that's on top of and now it's what's great is that it makes it very easy. So if you bring in mocap, then you can just put this. Here's this right here. This particular control rig has all the information on the mocap. Then you add this other one that's basically it's additive, an additive control rig on top, so you can adjust it wherever you want to. So say her arm was like in the way, you can just move it up, and now you can keyframe that here, and it will follow. Now this is going to jump back because I don't want to mess up the keyframes here, but and they're already keyframed. But that's the goal. That's the idea. Say, you know, her arm would look like it was hyperextended, so we actually, you know, bent it a little bit more, you know, so it wasn't like looking odd. So things like that. That was the only cleanup. There wasn't really that much cleanup with the mocap. It's like Xing suits. I can't recommend them more for doing this kind of stuff. But this made it very easy. So, and what was great is that we could, you know, this little case that she had here, you know, we could constrain that really easily. We could animate it. We could add dynamics. You could take it off or pop back. But we could add animation to that as well, and that's, you would do that in here or do some dynamics within. But again, this all could be done in Unreal and not have to go out of Unreal to do all this this work that literally doesn't take that much time at all. So again, I'm just, you know, so as an artist, I'm all about, like, you know, not having to go through so many different steps and having to leave a package and go in somewhere else and come back in and go, oh shit, that's not right, I got to do it again or something like that. You see it.
Or it comes in and there's like it's wigged out or something, right? Like just by the export and import and export and import process, you forgot to click one checkbox, and now the whole, you spend 30 minutes doing something, and now you got to go back and be like, okay, now I click the checkbox. It's just like that kind of crap. Like if you only have 6 weeks to do a 9-minute short, you don't have time.
Yeah, a couple hours of that, and you've wasted a significant amount of time on your short. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so true. Let's see. I was going to open up the creature real quick. So let's see. Let me go back to our. That's the wrong one. Sorry about that, guys. Too many things open. So the next thing. So we talked a bit about metahumans. So if you're not familiar with metahumans, like it's basically if it's part of the Quixel package, which is free. It's all free. And that's the beauty of it, is like you can play around these characters, customize them in this thing called MetaHuman Creator. It's really fun. You can create your own faces and everything like that, combine faces. So if you haven't messed with it, I completely, as an artist, just have fun with faces, really, to be quite honest. Now those characters can be brought in, like she was brought in here, and then these like have these control rigs here that you can for the face. So we were able to do some with. You know, mocap with, like I said, the iPhone, but then started to adjust it here, and then all this basically you could do all the different animation on the face afterwards to get all the subtleties you wanted, and you could do all the lip sync if we wanted to, and that's going to be our next, you know, project, is really push these characters into realism. So we get rid of the whole like uncanny valley that has been haunting visual effects for so long, and so then this is just, here's just like, you know, showing like, I have to get into all this stuff, but basically like how, you know, some of the mocap, this is NVM, which is, it's Xen's software. So this is just, you know, this is interesting up here because this is like in our living room, my house. And so Christopher was like, I said, you know, you're going to go through some tunnels, you're going to be chased by something, have like, you know, so we had like this thing that looked like a, I think it might have been some like a piece of a broom or something like that. And he held it and just kind of ran around like that was your gun. And then this down here is like, you know, in the cockpit, we knew she needed to land, so there was like going through that whole process of landing and then, you know, pushing the buttons. And you can see like what's cool is like the hands and stuff like that. This right here shows all the fingers moving, which that's all stretch sense.
It looks pretty good. I was expecting the fingers to sometimes like shoot all over. Sometimes like you see like that, but it looks really solid.
Yeah, it's really exciting. So and you know, Xen, it's not cheap, but it's like it's the value of what you get with. You think about the time you spend cleaning up mocap data. We're going to a company that may specialize in it. If you're just an artist that just wants to create a character and you can do it in your own home, that's what we were able to do here, which is, you know, it's kind of cool.
I mean, you think about the cost of animator hours versus the cost of one suit. I mean, this would have been, I mean, I don't even know how many animator hours it would take to animate this from scratch, and it still wouldn't look as good. So
yeah,
the suit just on this one project paid for itself easily 5 times over.
That's
yeah,
super interesting perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's one of those things you always look at things. I mean, a lot of times, and you can always call the company like Exxon and Stretch Sense, all these different companies. They're really good at giving deals and doing
And
promotions. So,
loaners.
yeah, loaners too. Actually, that's actually
like,
where
like they'll give it to you for a few weeks just to mess around with it and figure out if it's the right thing for you. Super highly suggested, because once you use it, you're gonna get addicted to it, and you're not gonna be able to give it up. So it's an expensive proposition to get a free loaner, because then you'll want it. It's like, don't be surprised you go drive a fast sports car. You want it back.
Yeah. Now you want it.
Yeah, right. Okay, so I'm gonna, hopefully this won't take long. I was gonna open all these before because I didn't want to waste the time, but there is like you have too many of these projects open at the same time. It does use a lot of memory, and I also didn't want things to crash on me during this presentation. So hopefully this will open up and it will work fine. Let's see. So this here is, once it starts playing. There it goes. Okay, so this is the alien shot. So this, it's going to take a bit because it has to buffer like some of the textures and stuff like that. Like it's going. But basically, this is what was interesting is this is mocap for both characters. So the alien itself had mocap on it, like to get this whole thing, and then it was added. Animation was added on top. We'll just shut down one of the other projects too, so I can utilize memory here. I have a fast machine, but there is limits. So yeah, what was great about this is that even early days, I was able to mocap. Like, thought, let's instead of just it makes sense to mocap your lead, but what about this alien that's not really that human? I mean, it's human in the fact that it's semi-biped, but it has all these extra arms and a tentacle face and all that stuff. But what was great is Christopher, the same person that was in the suit here, was let's act it out, this whole scene of being shot, and then we were able to get almost all the animation, especially for previs, we were able to get it all completed. And then one of our really talented animators, Nathan, ended up going and doing all the animation and on top, which we actually have a control rig here too, and it was similar to the same thing where it was like there was animation on top of the rig. There's the rig. So here's like the rig for the creature. So it was like after it had all the mocap, and then you can see all the keyframes that were added on top. So there's quite a few that were added to get the subtleties of like the little arms and everything else, and the tentacles on the face. But all that stuff was like done because I think it sped up that process too, because it gave me as the director a chance to I want my performance and the timing and the animator just to be able to go back over and do some make it better and give it the beauty work on making the creature come to life. But let's see. So the next thing, if we have time, I know it's actually 9 o'clock, so I was going to show you a bit about the one thing that I know we want to do some Q&A, so I think we should probably what I can do is if you just go to the marketplace, so and type in let's see, where is it? It might be even if you go into free, might be in there, but ASC, there it is. So if you type in ASC Tucson, like you would know how to spell Tucson. But if you just type in ASC, this will come up. But it's free. You create a project, and there's there's 4 different animations. It's got the control rig. You can just play around with it. You can see our skin shader that we really spent some time on the skin shader too. We worked with Epic to push some of the subsurface in there, but also get the detail really close. So Epic was a great help.
Steal that shader because it's got some really cool stuff going on in the micro normals and everything. That's how you get that. Is you get that really that super close up kind of look and feel.
That's awesome. We just posted the link for you all in the chat, so straight to the marketplace. You can get it from there.
Yeah.
This kind of shows you what it looks like.
Cool stuff. just go make
Yeah.
some cool stuff with this alien. It'd be super fun to see it bouncing around on the internet. That'd be
Yeah,
rad.
because it's like, so why, probably it's like, why did we give this away? So it's like, part of it is like, what we find is that, I'm not selfish when it comes to like knowledge. It's like, that's why we're doing this right now. I want to give knowledge to everybody out there, because I think Epic has made an incredible software that for artists and filmmakers, there's nothing like it. And so part of that is just making people, excited about it, but also giving them something that makes them excited, like this. So we're hoping to be able to do more
as well.
more.
Like, and then as well, selfishly, like the more people that know this, the more people we can work together with on it.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Like part of this is like it is fairly bleeding edge, right? So the more we talk about it, the more likely it is that you guys will take up the banner and try and go make something, and then before long we're working together and making something even better. So
That's awesome.
Go learn it, go get it. Please have fun.
Yeah, absolutely. One quick question that's already come up already. We've got a ton, so I'll go ahead and start listing some of them.
Yeah,
up.
let's
But
just
people are very curious about the size of your team on this. Like, how big was the team?
Team
Pretty
was
limited.
very small, actually. It was, there's probably about 10 people total, off and on. I mean, there's more when you think of, like, we actually had, like, for sound and music, like John O'Hare, he was our composer. We hired a whole orchestra in Budapest, and
That's
that was
cool.
exciting. It's like, I got to see, like, so he mocked it up and temped it while we were creating the story, and then at a certain point we had to lock it because we actually had an orchestra in Budapest that was actually going to finish the music, and that was exciting to see because I was able to see it in real time. And that was, so all those people had their own team. Then you had the sound, and they had their own team too. But as far as like the ASC and finishing and creating this, it was really probably a team of 10 at the most. But it was off and on. Me, I was on it probably 24/7 through that 6 weeks, and actually until after that, I actually I'm still recovering. Because it took a lot. It took a lot out of me, but it was exciting at the same time because I was so thrilled that I was able to complete it with such a small team. That was part of that was the fear at the beginning, because it's like, how could we ramp up so quick and get this done and then have the everybody working separate too. So that's why I think, for me, it taught me a lesson of, like, this again, and gave me a reason to fall in love with Epic even more, is that fewer people can make something really powerful. It doesn't take an army to create like something that that you can be proud of. I think that there's and that's just the beginning days. I think there's it's just starting, and now that I think the industry is hungry for something new as well. So I think it's a good time for it.
Totally. I did the Unreal Fellowship a couple months ago, and similar process. Short film in 4 or 5 weeks, and it definitely takes a lot out of you to do all that in such a short time. But a couple questions from the chat, which are kind of aligned. When you got a small team, was there like a lot of ramp up or learning curve for your team to learn Unreal, or had you guys been using Unreal for a long time, or was this something that you were all, because you had been using it, you said, since 2018, but was everybody doing that in your studio, or just parts of their studio was? Or
no, that was honestly, it was 20, when it was the VR, that was almost a different team. That was just our intro into, like, oh, this is cool, this now I can see some potential. And so I got inspired myself, and so when we started in 2020, it was the pandemic.
I mean, yeah, basically, like, beforehand in 2018, it was more like traditional crew and us making like mostly VR stuff. But that was before me and Aaron really knew Unreal.
Wow.
And then at COVID, day one of COVID, on lockdown in LA, we lost half our jobs, and on day two, we lost the rest.
Wow.
And it stayed that way for some time. Scary times.
Absolutely.
And some people still haven't recovered from that. Luckily we did. But what it did was it gave us time to basically pivot and basically retool ourselves. And look, and I think surprisingly, it was a lot faster to learn than it was Maya. Maya is like this infinite puzzle box.
Right.
Whereas once you kind of get your head wrapped around the way that Unreal does things, it's really simple, and everything kind of follows the same rules. Like there is a process for everything, and it's all kind of the same process. It's not like suddenly they throw a curveball at you. Like the software is fairly straightforward once you can kind of manipulate the programmers in your head.
Yeah, once you get like maps and stuff. Like you think of maps, you think, oh, is that texture maps? No, that's a scene. So, but once you understand, but that's terminology of like any of like software is going to have its own name for what it's doing. So, but I think that it was COVID. It was like we had a lot of time on our hands. So like and I had a lot of stories to tell. Might as well start learning this. And when I got the results that was coming out of it, I thought, oh shit, this is amazing. And then there was like one test we did with the Demogorgon, because we thought, oh, we have the Demogorgon from Stranger Things. Let's just put that in Unreal, see how that works. And we showed that to someone at Epic, and they were like, we have to talk. So that was after that point, it kind of like that opened the doors at Epic. And we started, and it also excited us because we wanted to bring creatures to life in real time.
And
that's really cool.
And the team did have to pivot, right? So our rigger, Alex, had to learn how to rig and control rig. And our animators, Eric and Jonathan, they had to learn, like they were my animators. They had to learn how to animate in Unreal. But like the learning curve isn't huge. Like just give yourself the time to do it. Don't, if you're learning from scratch, don't get frustrated. Just, give yourself the time to do it, stick to it. And it comes pretty, like once you get, there's like a hump, you get over a hump and all of a sudden everything just gets way easier.
Yeah. What did you use to learn? Was there like a learning portal, anything specific? YouTube?
Yeah.
But actually, I will give a shout out to a guy on YouTube by the name of William Foucher. His stuff is dope. Like if you're looking for like, I think a lot of like YouTube tutorials can go on and on and on about like, and here's what I had for breakfast, and let me tell you about, yada yada yada. But he's great because he just gets straight to the point, and it's like, here's how you make something look amazing quickly, and then you're like, great, 5 minutes of like watching a video, and now like I'm armed. Definitely go check out William Foucher.
But I think that learning, for us, and obviously, I'm glad that you took the fellowship, and I'm glad that that's out there, and hopefully it continues, because I think that and it's great that they pay you to like work on to learn, which is crazy, that whole concept. But for me, it's like, and Steffen, we just like Google, like, I started like opening up, like, okay, I want to do this. I'm inspired. I just saw this cool thing that somebody did on Unreal. How'd they do it? I studied it. Then I started to like type in on Google, like, how do you render? How do you light? How do you, and then all of a sudden all these tutorials come up, and I just took it piece by piece, and I only watched the piece that I needed that information. I'm not one to watch tutorials all the way through if they are really long. I just don't have the bandwidth in my mind. I usually look at things as a what I need at that point. What do I need to? How do I save? Where do I save? Where do I light? Where do I, And I learned the hard way. I was screwing up things left and right, going, why does it keep deleting my lights?
Sequencer was a nightmare for me. That thing, I had so many hard knocks in Sequencer.
It's a totally different concept. Than normal 3D work. You're like it's really tough to get your heads wrapped around. But then once you do, you do. And luckily, Aaron got into it a little bit before me, so he got to break everything, and then I got to be like, why is this broken? And he'd be like, oh, let me tell you.
I did that. I'll show you.
It's great to have somebody, now that we can go back and forth, like, and talk about, like, okay, why is he doing this? Like, and because Steffen will have different experiences.
That's a good hot tip, actually. Learn with a partner.
Absolutely. The buddy system.
Learn with don't try and learn on your own. Learn with a partner, because they're gonna break stuff in ways that are different than you.
Yeah, totally. And that whole thing is like, it's like, why is this happening? And like, it's frustrating when it's just yourself. But yeah, if you have a partner and it's like, oh, let me look into that while you work on something else, it's like, it's pretty cool. But again, our team, and I think that's the beauty of it, is like, we're trying to not grow too huge. I think it's hard to maintain in this industry. And I think that's the beauty of Unreal is that you can only a few people. It depends on what you're doing. If you're doing a feature or doing a game, then you're going to need a whole gigantic team. But
Sure.
the kind of stuff that we're looking at, we really want to, I want to have a lot more creative control and freedom and direction myself, and not just give it to somebody and like find out like, oh, I don't know what they're talking about. I need to know it, and that's the beauty of this software for me, which I didn't have when we were doing visual effects. A lot of times there was, a lot of people would just say, I can't do this, and I didn't know because I wasn't doing it. Now I know.
Helps
Right.
to be able to speak that language, have that experience.
Yeah.
Well, and the beauty of being able to download a bunch of stuff off the marketplace and then
Yes.
and then using Niagara, right? I don't have to be a Niagara Houdini artist to be able to take something, smash it together, and make it look pretty good. And that's part of it. Now, of course, would it help if I knew Houdini? Yeah, sure, but that stuff is especially black magic.
Absolutely. I think the marketplace is like the best because there's so much stuff on there that's free that you can download it, check it out, rip it apart, see what works, see what doesn't work, and kind of use it as like an experimental lab where you're like, how does this function? Even if it's not what it looks like or what we want to look like, you can still use that, which is cool.
Yeah, that's I learned a lot that way. Reverse engineering, like something you download and it's like, and then go, okay, this is cool. This is not exactly what I want to use, but how they create it. And then you go, oh, now I can do it. That's a great way to learn. And actually, and that's in soft homage in Maya, I did that too. Like always the sample stuff. Like I wasn't good at creating stuff from scratch. Like especially effects because that's a mindset and it's But if someone built it and you got something, you go, okay, that's how it's built. What if I combine it with this? What's going to happen? Oh, that's cool. It's the fun of it.
Absolutely. There was a question about your mocap. Were you using LiveLink for the mocap at all, or was it just like in Unreal?
No, actually, for that I tried that, but then
It's just FBX exports, yeah.
Yeah, it was just FBX. It was a lot of it. We could do it that way. It was just, and I think I will in the future for certain projects because there were certain things where it was like guessing, it's like where's the geo, where's the wall, and this where's the cave wall or something like that. So, but it was also easy to move around and
to move the
manipulate.
wall too, or move the character.
Yeah, move the camera, move the wall.
Yeah.
But in some scenarios, I could see that you would want it in a live link. It's just I was learning that as I was going too, like learning how to mocap, how to do like put this Stretch Sense, which is also a separate software, and they combine that with Xen. That it was like one of those that was like, that in itself wasn't a big learning curve, but I had to do that. And then to do live link at the same time in my own house, like I had to like prioritize.
Yeah, absolutely. Another mocap question, and you had kind of alluded to it, but I was curious if exactly what it was. So for the facial animation, you used LiveLink for a little while with the iPhone, but then it sounds like Cubic came in as well, or what was the full process there?
Yeah, there was a lot of times that I tried to, because we had the mocap, and every time we looked at previs, it was just dead face. So it's like, okay. But it's not ideal to do mocap on a face after the fact, because it's always going to look like it, especially if it's being motivated and the head's turning around and all that other stuff.
Yeah, it looks weird.
But there were certain shots where it's like she's in her cockpit and she's just like looking down and looking around, and it's like there's not really dialogue, it's just blinking and stuff like that. That's easy, it's perfect. So I'll use live link for that.
Cool.
But Cubic Motion was amazing. A couple animators over there that really that brought it to life. I mean, it took it in just like 4 days. They were able to like basically take the sequence that I had, the edit, and just bring it to life like in those few days. They had the dialogue that it was in the sequencer, so they could line it up with her blinks and looking around and the cheeks and all that stuff.
And that was just for like the superhero shots, where you're really just close up on her face and registering all that detail and that kind of stuff. But yeah, like most of the time, you can get away if it's a mid or a far shot. You can get away with the stuff that the iPhone is the regular old iPhone stuff is doing. However, I think in our next pass, I'm excited to learn faceware and get like a proper head-mounted camera HMC setup and that kind of stuff.
That'd be really cool.
Yeah, I think that'll be the next thing. We'll have a complete package. Yeah,
because the iPhone's really great, but it is laggy, so you can't use it while you're using everything else, right? And it requires a very specific setup. So yeah, if we had like, you know, the whole agency thing, that would be really rad.
That's cool. Question about some of your assets. I know you had said you used TurboSquid, you used Megascans. Did you do any of your own photogrammetry, or was it mostly Marketplace and
Yeah, no,
other
we
places?
have done photogrammetry, but very rudimentary and only experimental here. But there wasn't time really to go out and do a lot of this. So it was about like, you know, it's like I knew I needed a spaceship, I knew I needed rocks, I knew all that stuff. So it's just starting to find it, if it was in the marketplace, if it was in Megascans, or if it was you know, TurboSquid. And there was different companies. TurboSquid has a bunch of other companies like that do that type of stuff. Like they have whole companies that just scan things. And so there's a company, and I wish I could remember their name because I would shout out to them. But they do a lot of like cave scans,
Cool.
and so when we were doing dive, it's like you know, Megascans is great, but they didn't have any of that kind of like stalactites or any of that other stuff that you would get. And that's where I found some really cool rock formations, and the one that you saw at the beginning and stuff like that. And I think it was from that same company. But
Yeah, that was
we are
cool.
we're definitely interested in the future, like, because you know, I mean, but there's so many resources out there. You know,
True.
why have us spend that much time just
Why buy a drone and then go fly it around for a week and then process that data?
Yeah.
You know, if somebody else has already done it. And
Yeah,
I
that's a
guess,
good point.
I guess the problem with that though is that eventually we're all going to be, and you see it like when we're all making our Unreal shorts. You're like, oh yeah, it's that one. It's that
Yeah.
asset. Oh, it's that suit. Oh, it's that landscape. Like we all know the assets we're all using. It's like
Yeah, you start seeing it pretty quick.
private joke amongst Unreal users. We're all like, I've used that one too.
Yeah, yeah. But even the ship and all that stuff in the drone, like that was like there was some TurboSquid, but we actually went in and retextured them, changed some elements on it, so that if you did see it, it's like it wouldn't be like, oh, I've seen that one. Hopefully, you know,
Yeah, exactly. Like everything was touched. There was nothing that was just like plunked right in,
except for the rocks.
Great.
Yeah, except for the rocks.
Yep.
Them in.
So speaking of high poly stuff, how you said it can make your file size really big, but how did like the straight from ZBrush multi-million poly sculpts go into Unreal? Was it pretty seamless, or?
Well, the Unreal stuff, like for this particular, when we did dive, which is another thing, there's a lot of like sculptures that were like, you know, sculpted from a lot of, you know, Hasan, our lead artist, he created some really great sculptures for that. And I was trying to get that from ZBrush into Unreal. There is sometimes I was having trouble with the FBXs, so I would go through Blender. I would go out of ZBrush into Blender. Blender would do something. It had to do with something with the triangles, because Unreal will only bring in triangles. If it doesn't have triangles, it will create its own. So if it does create its own, it's going to create holes. But Blender is a little smarter with that, and you can export from ZBrush triangles, but for some reason it had some problems. And honestly, I blame myself, because I don't want to blame, because ZBrush is amazing.
Sure.
I think it's I'm doing something wrong. There's only, again, we tried to do this on a lot of this stuff like all ourselves, so it's like with very little resources, just to be able to kind of, you know, get it done in time and not. At a certain point, certain things that worked, a workflow, and that worked for me.
That's great. One question kind of just about your general workflow. It seems like you have gotten or fallen in love with the process of using Unreal. It seems like an incredible creative tool for you. Do you think it's going to influence the way you go about concept and ideation moving forward, I guess?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I think it's like a lot of times in the past, like when we use ZBrush and we bring in maybe Keyshot for a creature or something like that, which is kind of the standard for a lot of creature artists. But there's a lot of environments that we have to create. And, you know, Unreal, it's like you can build them instantly. You can just create them, or you can, marketplace stuff just to start off with, put a character in there, and you do a painting on top of that, but now you have it in there. And we've done stuff like that. So I do feel that that's just going to get easier and faster for all of our artists.
Were there any limitations when you were using 5 specifically? You had used 4 before. Was there anything with 5? Obviously, it's in beta, so maybe there was stuff that was like, don't touch this for now.
No. There's actually importing FBX has seemed better in 5. I haven't had, and as a matter of fact, I think I haven't had as many problems. So I think there's improvements there with their FBX importer, which is great. Like I said, there is some stuff that they're working out, and this is with glass. So this is one aspect of it, and it's new. So there's she had a glass shield, and shallow depth of field. The way it works in Unreal, and especially in 5, I think is that it can determine one object from depth of field, from like say a background or something that's in the foreground. But if there's a glass, that's a third object that's see-through. So they're working out, and that's going to be coming up, I think, in the version when they actually release the.
Yeah.
That they're aware of it because it's something that was the one thing. So I had to be creative with the way I actually shot her with shallow depth of field, because you notice that, and you could see it in some of the shots, like where it feels a little extra blurry on her shield when it's profile. That's one that they're aware of, that actually is going to be. But on the whole, like I said, there was no crashing except for the metahumans, and this is where I had problems with the metahumans, and it has nothing to do with them, but where the crashing happened. And again, I blame myself, not the software. But whenever I had mocap on the character, and I had face capture too that I did on my iPhone, and then I translated that after it was all set up into a scene that was actually pretty dense in like the cockpit. Like there's certain times I'd have like Christopher would be in the suit, like messing around, but then the next time we did the suit, he's over here. So in mocap, you have to move it over manually, like because of world space and stuff like that. Every time I moved it over in the sequencer and I went to save, it crashed. So I had to figure out the distance manually before I brought it into sequencer. And so these kind of things, you just like, those are the hurdles I had to have. And again, it's probably something I did because I haven't heard of too many people having problems with it. So I don't want
well, yeah. I mean, the fact that you created a almost 9-minute long short film in 6 weeks with a piece of beta software and had very few to little crashes is a good sign.
Right. Like you would expect more. I expected way more.
No, I think and Epic did too. I think they actually were surprised that we chose to do it in 5 because which was after the fact. I let them know, it's like, oh, by the way, this is being done in 5. They go, what? It's not ready.
Yeah.
And then they go, and then they see it and they go, wow, okay, tell us. So we had we had a really good kind of postmortem, like what worked, what didn't, all that stuff, because it helps them as they move forward. So
yeah. That's great.
But, yeah.
We got a question about lenses, like digital lenses, essentially. Like typically, if you're doing live production, you'll have like a lens kit, and you'll select all your lenses. Did you have a process like that doing a digital film in Unreal?
Well, the thing is like when you think about like lens packages, like when you're shooting something, you think like, oh, okay, I want this to be like a wide or a long lens.
We think anamorphic versus spherical, or
yeah. So we did think that way. It wasn't 100% accurate to a real. The one thing is like I knew like a 50. Like a lot of the shots, the wide shot or the establishing shots were 50, so that I could, and even some of the close-ups, just so I could feel like I don't there's when I was when I was starting, I was experimenting with kind of a more warped lens, just to kind of like make it more experimental, but it was actually disorienting to watch. So I a lot of times went back to like 50s and 30s and 25s. Sometimes I think there was 80.
But to get to the heart of the question, I think there wasn't really like a scientific process of trying to recreate real world lenses in Unreal. And I think part of that is because of the time frame of this, but also just because I think maybe part of some of that ideology and that process comes from the practical approach on set. I have to have a lens kit because I am ordering from this one distributor, and I need to order it this many weeks out, or else it will not arrive on set, and I will be without this, that, and the other. So I think there are a lot of those questions come out of necessity in the end. Whereas in Unreal, I think if you want to, you can just make a very pretty image, and you twist some knobs and you dial some buttons and you make your image pretty. So I think some of that is just, you don't have to have that mental overhead in the front. You can almost wait until the end, and while you're kind of crafting your shots and dialing things back and forth. So while I have done that, like you have to do that for virtual production.
Hmm.
If you're doing something with an LED screen or something like that, then you have to know what your lens kit is, and you have to go into your film backs, and you have to make them perfect. But if not, then there's no real reason to do it. Just go and start crafting your shots and see what you want first.
Right.
I don't know, if you guys saw Aaron's project, like you said, it's kind of messy in there, but that's actually on purpose. And we all do this. We all work super, super messy early on, right? Just smash it all in there and see what works and what doesn't first. If you overbuild stuff in the beginning, you're going to spend so much time trying to make the most perfect of projects and perfect thing, and then you're going to end up throwing half of it out. And that's kind of like I saw one of the questions in here as well. It was kind of like the nature of now that we're working in real time, like clients' expectations are
Hmm.
higher and like workflows are faster. And this is kind of part of it too. Is I think this is going to be the main issue with working in real time is probably going to be artist burnout,
Mm.
because you can't just because you can change something up until the last minute doesn't mean you should, but you
Right.
can. If you need to, you can. And what that means is you usually do.
Yeah, that was actually, that same thing is like, we had 6 weeks to finish it, to start to finish, and it sounded like daunting. And when we first started the project, it was like simpler than the story we had. There was no loop, there was no a lot of the stuff that happens throughout it. It was actually just she confronts it, she finds the drone, the eye that came off of it, and she's confronted by an alien. And we realized it didn't feel and she basically kills the alien, and then she's surrounded by tons more, and it stops there. And it's like we've seen those cliffhanger type of endings. I wanted it to feel more interesting, but but that one felt doable for the time we had.
Hmm.
So I said we can do this. But then if someone were to tell me the story we actually ended up doing at the beginning, I would have said we can't do it. But now that I've done it, I feel like okay, that is doable. But the fact is that we had 6 weeks when it came down to it. It's like if I had more time,
Hmm.
was it necessary to finish the product? I'm still proud of it. So it's like a lot of ways we could have had a year, and it may still look the same. We would have been really burned out. So having that really short period of time was actually kind of nice, because then you could just focus, keep your vision tight, get it done, opposed to muddying it up and keep muddying it because you have all this extra time. So there's
Right.
something cool about having that really short period of time to get something done.
Yeah,
Uh,
actually, on the flip side of that, there was another project that we finished just recently, but we had like a year and a half to do it, and the director was kind of like wandering and I'm like, what
Hmm.
about this? And every time you get on the call, they'd be like, "We had an idea," and you're like, "Oh no, what's your idea?"
Yeah. No. 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 Wait. We're almost done. Yes.
Right. So yes, there's something nice about like the deadline that kind of the pressure
yeah,
that
it forces you, yeah,
Hmm.
to get it done, and hopefully you do, in that time frame.
Yeah.
Um,
Totally. Two last questions, and we are almost out of time because it's almost 9:30. First question is, and they're kind of related. If people want or they're doing similar work and they want you to see it, where can they post it so you can see it? Like if you're looking for artists, where do you look?
So there's the contact page on our website. That's a great place. There's a little column there for artists, and that goes directly to me.
There you
Um,
go.
there you go. Boom. There's the website right there. And that goes directly to my email. And I will also just spell it out, just in case anybody is interested. My email is Steffen, Steffen, at asc-vfx.com. Email me. Um,
Perfect.
now, I'll say email me. I can't promise I'll get back to you because I'm sure my inbox is about to explode.
Yeah, I was gonna say, be careful
yeah,
with that because
but
this
it'll try
video
its
is gonna be
best. I
online
mean,
for a while.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, but just shoot us a line, right? Like we always want like like it's always helpful for people to write me if they want to work together, as opposed to me reaching out to somebody else. So you want to work together. That's like um, effort and desire are the big motivators, right? If
Mhm.
you want to do something, then you're going to be better at it than somebody who doesn't want to do it. So
Totally. And then I guess the last question, which is tangentially related, is: are you hiring?
Oh yeah,
Always.
no, we always, yeah. No, and I think that we're really looking for like I said, Unreal effects artist is one big aspect. That's a hard find for us, like effects artist and doing actual like Niagara and all that stuff. That's one aspect that we always have a need for because there's not enough of them out there. But we're looking for actually anybody um, that because we're expanding in the sense that we're actually doing more of these type of things in Unreal. We are always designing, of course, it's something that's our main aspect, but of our company. But these storytelling in Unreal, I think, is really kind of the future for us, and the future for I think. There's a huge desire for things like this. I mean, you got like Netflix has the Love, Death, and Robots, and that's that. Having these cool little shorts. I think shorts are really kind of fun.
Anthologies, yeah.
They're really the anthology type of like storytelling is great because you can bite off a little bit, yeah, and just and not dedicate your whole life to spending hours and hours watching like something. Even though I do the same thing, I like so many series, but I think it's a medium that is it's been around for a while, but I think it's starting to have a little bit more legs as far as like
Well, and as well, I think it's more interesting for creators as well, right? So I don't have to go and
Mm-hmm.
spend 5 years of my life making a film that may or may not suck. Like it's way easier. It's like way better for me as a creative to go in and try and make something in a few months, and then
Yeah.
and then if it sucks, okay, well I'll go make something else. Oh, and now I'm really proud of this one that I did.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, nobody goes out to make a shitty movie. That nobody's
right,
intentionally doing that.
right.
Right.
Everybody tries to make really good stuff. It's just like
Mm-hmm.
making a movie is hard, and it's
Mm-hmm.
amazing. It's amazing when one, it even happens at all, and two, if it just happens to be good.
Right.
So keep that in mind.
Yeah, and there's the short format also is kind of appealing because you can experiment in a lot of ways that you can't on a feature.
Mm-hmm.
Like even this we chose in the end to put a lot more dialogue than I originally wanted for a character, but I think it helped the story. And it's also, I think, because it's a short format, it's acceptable in a lot of ways. Would that have
Mm-hmm.
worked for a feature? It's hard to say, but because it's a completely different monster.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you both so much for spending the time and putting this all together and doing the short film. And like, I think the fact that you're kind of innovating the way that, I mean, you essentially did a finished piece and a non-finished piece of software, and I think that's incredible. And it's just really inspiring to see what you've created in all of this. And just again, thank you so much for being here tonight. We really appreciate it.
Well, thanks, Josh, and thanks to everybody for attending and your interest in this. And look out for more stuff that we'll be doing in Unreal, and we look forward to seeing stuff from you guys too as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
And I'll just give it one more shout out if you guys haven't watched the short.
Mm-hmm.
Go watch the short. We're really proud of it. We worked with Unreal on it. Super happy about it. And as well, go into the marketplace, download the Alien, have some fun. Make it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Make it do a Fortnite dance or something. I don't know.
No.
Have some
Oh,
fun.
one last thing. I know that people are. There's a couple people asking. They still want your movie render queue specs.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
Yeah.
somebody asked if you can put it on the marketplace. I don't know if that's a thing you can do.
I saw that comment. I don't know if you can actually save out render queue presets. Oh, you can. You can actually save out a preset by itself, but I don't know if you could actually. I don't know if Unreal would let you just upload that as an asset in the Unreal store. We'll ask
I don't
them.
know. There you go.
People who we can ask about it, I suppose.
Yeah, otherwise, we'll find a way to get it up somewhere.
Yeah.
Right. Or you just copy paste the specs.
Yeah, that's fine.
Too bad. Cool. Screenshot.
Mm-hmm.
That'll do it.
Awesome, guys. Well, thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who's been watching the stream. We really appreciate all your comments, all your time. And thank you very much. Stay tuned to Noman's channels. We have a bunch of cool events just like this one on our YouTube page and a bunch of awesome ones coming up. So please stay tuned for that. And we will see you all next stream. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thanks, Josh.
See you guys.
Yeah.